The morning sun cast long shadows across Millfield's east side when Rachel Chen first heard the rumble of heavy machinery. She looked up from her laptop, where she'd been reviewing the financial records that would destroy Officer Martinez's life, and felt her stomach drop. Through her kitchen window, she watched a yellow Caterpillar bulldozer lumber down Elm Street, its steel tracks chewing up asphalt. "No way," she whispered, but her hands were already moving, muscle memory from a dozen combat zones taking over. She slammed the laptop shut, grabbed her phone, and started recording. The bulldozer stopped directly in front of her modest two-story home, the house she'd bought with her military disability compensation after an IED in Afghanistan had ended. Her Navy SEAL career 3 years ago, the house where she'd been planning to start over, to build something good in this forgotten corner of Ohio. Officer Danny Martinez climbed down from the driver's seat, his Millfield PD uniform stretched tight across his beer gut. Even from 50 yards away, Rachel could see the ugly satisfaction twisting his face. Behind him, 2 more patrol cars pulled up, and she recognized Officers Blake and Morrison, Martinez's usual crew. Rachel's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number: "Stop digging or lose everything." She deleted it and kept recording. Mrs. Chen, Martinez's voice boomed across her front yard. "City ordinance violation. This structure is condemned. You've got 10 minutes to evacuate." Rachel stepped onto her porch, her bare feet silent on the weathered boards. The morning air was crisp, carrying the scent of autumn leaves and diesel exhaust. "Show me the paperwork, Martinez." "Don't need paperwork for a safety hazard." He gestured at the bulldozer. "Gas leak reported. Immediate evacuation required." "Funny, I didn't smell any gas until you showed up." Martinez's jaw tightened. "You got a smart mouth for someone about to be homeless. And you've got a lot of nerve for someone who's been skimming money from the evidence locker for 2 years." The words hung in the air like smoke from a gunshot. Martinez went very still, his hand drifting toward his service weapon. Blake and Morrison flanked him, their faces professionally blank. But Rachel caught the quick glance they exchanged. They knew. Of course they knew. "You want to repeat that?" Martinez's voice had dropped to a whisper. Rachel raised her phone higher, making sure the camera caught his face. 2 years, Danny, 15,000 in cash from drug busts that never made it to evidence. Another 8 grand in confiscated jewelry. Should I keep going? You don't know what you're talking about. I know about the safety deposit box at First National. I know about your gambling debts. And I know about the video surveillance from the evidence room that you thought was broken but wasn't. Martinez's face had gone the color of old brick. "Turn off the phone." "No, turn off the goddamn phone. Make me." For a moment, nobody moved. A garbage truck rumbled past on the main road, its hydraulics whining. A dog barked somewhere in the distance. Rachel could hear her own heartbeat, steady and strong despite the adrenaline flooding her system. 12 years of special operations had taught her to find calm in chaos, to think clearly when death was breathing down her neck. Martinez nodded at Blake, who started walking toward the porch. "Ma'am, you need to surrender that device, Officer Blake." Rachel's voice carried the authority of someone who'd commanded men in combat. "You take one more step onto my property, without a warrant, and I'll file charges for trespassing, intimidation, and violation of my civil rights. Your choice." Blake hesitated, glancing back at Martinez. "I said get the phone," Martinez roared. Blake took another step forward. Rachel shifted her weight, and something in her posture made him freeze. She wasn't just a disabled veteran with a smartphone anymore. She was a coiled spring, a weapon waiting to be unleashed. "I've killed 23 people," Rachel said quietly. "All of them were armed and trying to kill me. You want to be number 24? Blake backed up so fast, he nearly tripped over his own feet. Martinez's face twisted with rage. "You threatening a police officer?" "I'm stating facts. Fact 1, I'm recording everything. Fact 2, you're on my property without probable cause. Fact 3, I have evidence of your criminal activity that's already been uploaded to 3 different cloud servers. Fact 4, you're about to make the biggest mistake of your life." Martinez climbed back into the bulldozer's cab. The engine roared to life, black smoke belching from the exhaust stack. "Last chance, Chen. Get out or get run over." Rachel didn't move. The bulldozer lurched forward, its blade scraping sparks from the asphalt. It crossed onto her property with a grinding crunch, flattening her mailbox like a beer can. The machine was massive, 12 tons of steel and fury, its tracks leaving deep gouges in her lawn. Rachel kept recording until the bulldozer was 20 feet away, then pocketed her phone and stepped off the porch. She walked calmly to her garage, opened the side door, and disappeared inside. Martinez pushed the bulldozer toward the house, probably planning to take out a corner post and watch the whole structure collapse. He was so focused on destruction that he didn't notice Rachel emerge from the garage carrying a rucksack and wearing a tactical vest she'd kept from her service days. She moved like smoke, circling wide to approach the bulldozer from its blind spot. The machine's engine was deafeningly loud, its tracks churning up earth and concrete as Martinez maneuvered for the killing blow. Rachel climbed onto the bulldozer's rear deck as quietly as a cat. Martinez was leaning forward, both hands on the controls, completely absorbed in his task. She could see the back of his neck, pale and vulnerable above his uniform collar. The bulldozer's blade hit the corner of her house with a tremendous crash. Wood splintered, siding buckled, and the entire structure shuddered. Martinez laughed, a sound like breaking glass. Rachel pressed the barrel of her Sig Sauer P320 against the base of his skull. "Turn it off," she said. Martinez's hands froze on the controls. "Jesus Christ, turn it off." The engine died with a shuddering cough. In the sudden silence, Rachel could hear Blake shouting into his radio, calling for backup. Morrison had drawn his weapon but couldn't get a clear shot with Martinez in the way. "Get out," Rachel ordered. Martinez climbed down slowly, his hands raised. When his feet hit the ground, Rachel was already there, the pistol trained on his center mass. Up close, she could smell his fierce sweat mixed with cheap cologne. "You're making this worse for yourself," Martinez said, trying to sound calm. "Assaulting a police officer, threatening with a deadly weapon, defending my home from an unlawful attack," Rachel corrected. "Stand or ground law in Ohio is pretty clear about that. Nobody's going to believe they'll believe the video." Rachel pulled out her phone with her free hand, showing him the screen. The red recording light was still blinking. "All of it. Your threats, your illegal demolition, everything." Martinez's face went white. "You can't. I already did. Streamed. Live to my lawyer's office. By now it's probably on YouTube." Blake and Morrison were creeping closer, trying to flank her. Rachel shifted position to keep them in her peripheral vision. The pistol never wavered from Martinez's chest. "Here's what's going to happen," Rachel said. "You're going to call your dispatcher and report that the gas leak was a false alarm. You're going to order your men to stand down. And then you're going to get in your patrol car and drive away, like hell, or I release the evidence room footage to the FBI, the state attorney general, and every news station between here and Cleveland. Your choice." Martinez's radio crackled. "Unit 23, what's your status?" Rachel smiled, but it was a cold expression, something she'd learned in the mountains of Afghanistan. "Answer them, Danny." Martinez keyed his radio with shaking hands. "Dispatch, Unit 23, false alarm on Elm Street. Situation under control." "Copy that, Unit 23, good boy." Rachel backed toward her damaged house, the pistol still trained on the three officers. "Now get off my property." "This isn't over," Martinez snarled. "No," Rachel agreed. "It's just beginning." The officers retreated to their cars, but they didn't leave. They parked across the street and settled in to watch. Rachel knew they were waiting for her to make a mistake, to give them an excuse to come back with overwhelming force. She holstered her weapon and surveyed the damage to her house. The bulldozer had caved in the entire northeast corner. Her living room was open to the sky, furniture buried under splintered beams and drywall. The structural damage was extensive, probably totaling the house. Her phone rang. The caller ID showed her lawyer's number. "David, Rachel, what the hell is going on? I just watched a video of you holding a gun on a police officer. He attacked my house with a bulldozer. I can see that. Are you hurt?" "No, but my house is destroyed. I need you to." The phone went dead. Rachel looked at the screen and saw the battery icon flashing red. She'd been recording for over an hour. A new engine sound made her look up. A black Chevy Suburban was rolling down Elm Street, followed by two more patrol cars. As she watched, a fourth police cruiser appeared from the opposite direction. They were boxing her in. Rachel retreated into what remained of her house and plugged her phone into a charger. While it powered up, she opened her laptop and checked the cloud servers. The video was already uploading, but the progress bar showed it would take another 20 minutes. Rodriguez's camera crew arrived faster than Rachel had thought possible. 47 minutes after her call, she watched from her basement window as a white van with Midwest Independent Media, painted on the side, pulled up behind the police perimeter. Two officers immediately moved to intercept it, but Rodriguez was already out and talking fast, his press credentials visible from 50 yards away. Rachel's phone buzzed, a text from Rodriguez stalling them. "Upload everything to the secure server I'm sending you. Password is Kandahar 2019. She'd served with Miguel Rodriguez in Afghanistan, where he'd been a Navy photographer before an RPG blast took his left eye and sent him home to become an investigative journalist. He specialized in military and police corruption stories, and he had a reputation for getting to the truth no matter who tried to stop him. While her files uploaded to Rodriguez's server, Rachel heard Captain Walsh's voice boom through the loudspeakers again. "Ms. Chen, we know you're listening. We want to resolve this peacefully. Send out your weapons and come out with your hands up." Rachel keyed her phone and called the command center's direct line. Number Sarah Winters had texted her along with a dozen others. "Command center, this is Rachel Chen. Put Walsh on." "Ma'am, we need you to put him on or I start shooting." 30 seconds later, "This is Captain Walsh." "Hello, Captain. I want to make something clear. I'm not coming out until my story goes public. I have evidence of systematic corruption in your department, and the only reason you want me silenced is because I'm right." "Miss Chen, you're making this harder than it needs to be. We're prepared to discuss your concerns through proper channels." "You mean the same proper channels that ignored my complaints for 6 months? The same channels that let Martinez and his crew terrorize my neighborhood while you looked the other way?" Walsh's voice hardened. "You threatened police officers with a deadly weapon. You're going to face charges regardless of whatever conspiracy theories you've cooked up." "Conspiracy theories?" Rachel laughed. "Captain, in about 30 minutes, every news outlet in the Midwest is going to have video of your officer Martinez attacking my home with a bulldozer. They're also going to have financial records showing $15,000 in missing evidence, bank deposits that don't match his salary, and recordings of him planning this whole operation." "That's impossible. You're bluffing, am I?" "Check your phone." Rachel had already sent Walsh a preview file just enough to make him sweat. She heard him cursing in the background, then shouting orders to someone. "Where did you get this? Does it matter? The question is, how much of your department is involved?" The line went quiet for a long moment. When Walsh came back on, his voice was different, desperate, calculating. "What do you want?" "Justice. Martinez and everyone who helped him goes to prison. The families you've displaced get compensation, and you clean house from top to bottom." "That's not possible." "Then we do this the hard way." Rachel hung up and immediately called her sister in California. "Jenny, it's Rachel. Oh my God. I've been watching the news. Are you okay? For now? Listen, I need you to do something for me. Remember, Dad's safety deposit box, the one with all his military records? Yeah, I need you to get something from it. There's a black folder marked insurance. Inside is a list of contacts people Dad served with who went into government. Law enforcement, FBI. Start calling them. Tell them what's happening here. Rachel, this is insane. You need to just surrender. And let the lawyers handle it. The lawyers can't handle this. Jen, Martinez has connections all the way up to the federal level. Someone's been protecting him, and they're not going to let me live long enough to testify." Rachel heard her sister crying on the other end of the line. "I can't lose you too, not after Mom and Dad. You won't. But I need you to make those calls. Please." Okay, I'll do it." While Jenny worked her contacts on the West Coast, Rachel's phone rang with an unknown number. She almost ignored it, but something made her answer. "Rachel Chen, who is this?" "Deputy Director Harrison, FBI Internal Affairs. I understand you have evidence of police corruption." Rachel's blood went cold. If the FBI was already involved, it meant the corruption went higher than she'd thought. "Maybe, depends on which side you're on. I'm on the side of the law, Miss Chen, and from what I'm seeing, some laws have been broken. By me or by Martinez? That remains to be determined. But I'm willing to listen to what you have to say, not over the phone. Too many people listening. Then how do you want to do this?" Rachel looked out her basement window at the growing crowd of law enforcement. SWAT teams were taking positions behind armored vehicles. A helicopter circled overhead. She counted at least 60 officers now, all focused on her destroyed house. "I want a neutral location. I want Rodriguez's cameras there, and I want a guarantee that I walk out alive. Ms. Chen, no one wants to hurt you. Then why do I see snipers on the roof across the street?" Harrison was quiet for a moment. "Where do you want to meet?" "The old Millfield Community Center. 1 hour. Just you, me, and the cameras. I'll need backup. One partner, unarmed. Any more than that, and I disappear." "Ms. Chen, you're surrounded. You can't just disappear." Rachel smiled grimly. "Deputy Director, I spent 12 years making people disappear in countries where everyone wanted to kill me. You think a bunch of small-town cops are going to stop me?" She hung up and immediately began preparing to move. The basement had 2 exits, the main stairs leading up to the kitchen, and an old coal chute that connected to the storm drainage system. Her father had shown her the tunnel when she was 12, part of the Underground Railroad that had run through Millfield in the 1850s. Rachel packed her essential gear, laptop, encrypted drives, weapons, and the physical documents that proved Martinez's crimes. Everything else was expendable. Her phone buzzed with a text from Rodriguez. "Feds are claiming you're a domestic terrorist, trying to get media blackout. I'm fighting it but need more time." She texted back. "Community Center, in 45 minutes, FBI meeting. Be there, on my way." Rachel opened the coal chute and dropped her pack into the darkness below. The tunnel was cramped and filthy, but it led to a storm drain outlet 6 blocks away, while outside the police perimeter. She'd used it 3 times as a kid to sneak out of the house, never imagining she'd need it to escape a small army. Before leaving, she set up a surprise for anyone who came looking. C4 wasn't easy to come by in civilian life, but thermite was. Just iron oxide and aluminum powder ingredients you could buy at any hardware store. She'd learned to make it during her demolitions training, and she'd been stockpiling supplies for months, planning to clear some old concrete from her backyard. Now it would serve a different purpose. Rachel rigged the thermite charges to her laptop's power supply. If anyone tried to access her computer, the hard drive would be reduced to slag in about 3 seconds. The same setup protected her physical files. She crawled into the coal chute and started the long, dirty journey through Millfield's underground. The tunnel was worse than she remembered. Decades of debris and standing water made every movement treacherous. Rats scattered as she passed, and the smell of decay filled her nostrils. But it was still better than facing 60 cops who wanted her dead. 20 minutes later, Rachel emerged from a storm drain behind the abandoned Kroger on Mason Street. The exit was hidden by overgrown bushes and hadn't been used in years. She cleaned off the worst of the grime and checked her phone. 17 missed calls, 43 text messages. Every news outlet in the state was trying to reach her. But the most important message was from Commander Torres. Extracted your file from official records. You never served. Understand? Rachel understood perfectly. Her SEAL service was now classified, which meant anyone who tried to verify her military background would hit a dead end. To the world, she was just a disabled veteran making wild claims about police corruption. It was a smart move. It protected the Navy from embarrassment while giving her plausible deniability, but it also meant she was truly on her own. The community center was a relic from the 1960s, built when Millfield's east side was still a thriving working-class neighborhood. Now it was scheduled for demolition. Another victim of the gentrification that Martinez and his cronies were orchestrating. Rachel arrived first and spent 15 minutes clearing the building. The main entrance was locked, but the fire exit had been jimmied so many times it barely held. Inside, dust motes danced in shafts of sunlight streaming through broken windows. The basketball court where she'd played as a kid was littered with debris and graffiti. She set up in the old meeting room, positioning herself with clear sight lines to all entrances. Her weapons were concealed but accessible. If this was a trap, she'd make them pay for it. Rodriguez arrived next, carrying a professional camera, and looking every inch the war correspondent he'd become. Behind him came a young woman with a boom mic and recording equipment. Jesus, Rachel, you look like hell. Feel worse. You get everything uploaded. Most of it. The financial records alone are enough to put Martinez away for 20 years, but there's something else you need to know. What? I did some digging on Captain Walsh. He's been taking money from Consolidated Development, the company that's been buying up properties on the east side. Marty. Senator Richard Blackwood lived in a $2.3 million mansion in Columbus's Bexley district, behind gates that were more decorative than functional. Rachel had been watching the property for 6 hours from a construction site across the street, timing the security patrols and mapping every entrance. The media storm had broken 4 hours ago. Rodriguez's footage was running on every major network, and hashtag Rachel Chen was trending nationwide. The fake FBI agent's body had been identified as Marcus Webb, a former Army Ranger with ties to 3 unsolved murders. Agent Carter was in critical condition but expected to survive. And the real FBI had issued a statement that they were launching a full investigation into corruption in Ohio law enforcement. But Rachel knew none of that mattered if Blackwood escaped. Men like him had offshore accounts, private jets, and friends in countries without extradition treaties. If she didn't act tonight, he'd disappear forever. Her phone vibrated with an encrypted message from Commander Torres. Whatever you're planning, don't. FBI has this handled, she typed back. FBI had it handled when they sent a fake agent to kill me. That wasn't us. Stand down, Ghost. That's an order. I'm not under your command anymore, sir. And ghosts don't take orders from the living. Rachel turned off her phone and checked her equipment one final time. She'd acquired new gear from a military surplus store: night vision goggles, climbing rope, and a suppressed .22 rifle that would barely whisper when fired. The plan was simple. Get close enough to Blackwood to record his confession, then disappear before his security could respond. She'd done similar missions in Afghanistan, but those targets had been enemy combatants in a war zone. This was different. This was an American senator on American soil, and despite everything he'd done, killing him would make her a terrorist in the eyes of the law. But she didn't plan to kill him. She planned to destroy him. At 11:47 p.m., the security patrol made its scheduled pass around the mansion's perimeter. Rachel had timed them. They were military precise, which meant predictably vulnerable. She crossed the street during their blind spot and scaled the estate's rear fence in 12 seconds. The grounds were expansive, with mature trees providing excellent cover. Motion sensors covered the main approaches, but they were older models that focused on the driveway's and front entrance. Rachel moved through the shadows like smoke, staying beneath the sensor grid's detection threshold. The mansion itself was a study in nouveau-rich excessa marble columns, gaudy fountains, and enough security cameras to film a movie. But the cameras were focused outward, designed to catch intruders approaching the building. None of them covered the ornamental trellis that ran up the mansion's east wall. Rachel climbed to the second floor and peered through a window into what appeared to be Blackwood's home office. The senator was inside, pacing behind an enormous desk while talking on a secure phone. Even through the glass, she could see the panic in his movements. The window was locked, but Rachel had tools for that. She worked quickly and silently, grateful for the classical music playing inside that masked the faint sounds of her entry. Don't care what it costs, Blackwood was saying into the phone. I want Chen dead and her sister silenced, permanently. Rachel's blood went cold. She'd known Blackwood was dangerous, but threatening Jenny crossed a line that couldn't be. Uncrossed, she slipped through the window and crouched behind a leather sofa, her phone recording everything. The FBI is already sniffing around the development deals. Blackwood continued. If they connect me to Martinez, we're all fucked. So clean it up. All of it. Senator. A new voice in the room, one of his security guards. There's a problem. Blackwood covered the phone. What kind of problem? CNN just ran a story about the fake FBI agent. They're saying he worked for us. That's impossible. Webb was freelance, not according to his bank records. 3 payments from Blackwater Solutions over the past month. And Blackwater Solutions is registered to your campaign's law firm. The phone slipped from Blackwood's hand and clattered onto his desk. For the first time since Rachel had been watching him, the senator looked genuinely afraid. How bad is it? He asked. Bad. The FBI is executing search warrants at Webb's apartment, Blackwater's offices, and Martinez's house. They're also requesting your financial records. They can't do that. I'm a sitting senator. They can if they have probable cause for criminal conspiracy, which they do now. Rachel smiled in the darkness. The FBI was moving faster than she'd expected, but she still needed Blackwood's confessions, something that would tie him directly to the violence against her family. The guard left, and Blackwood slumped into his chair. He looked older now, the stress aging him in real time. He picked up his phone and dialed a new number. It's me, he said when someone answered. We have a problem. No. Bigger than that. The Chen woman has blown everything wide open. What do you mean you can't find her? She's one person. Rachel shifted position to get a better angle with her camera. The movement was silent, but something made Blackwood look up. Their eyes met across the darkened office. For a heartbeat, neither of them moved. Then Blackwood lunged for the panic button on his desk. Rachel was faster. She vaulted over the sofa and tackled him before his hand reached the alarm. They went down hard, Blackwood's chair spinning away as they hit the Persian rug. Get off me, Blackwood gasped, trying to crawl toward his desk. Help, intruder. Rachel pressed the suppressed point to 2 against the base of his skull. Make another sound and it'll be your last. Blackwood went perfectly still. Good. Now we're going to have a conversation about what you did to my neighborhood. I don't know what you're talking about, Senator. I've been recording you for the past 10 minutes. I have you on tape ordering my death and threatening my sister. So let's skip the denials and move straight to the confession. You're insane. You think you can break into my home and threaten a United States senator? I think I can do whatever's necessary to protect my family. Rachel pulled out her phone and showed him the recording. Look familiar? Blackwood's face went white as he watched himself on the small screen. That's illegal surveillance. It'll never hold up in court. Maybe not. But it'll hold up in the court of public opinion, especially when CNN runs it during prime time. What do you want? The truth. All of it. How long have you been using corrupt cops to terrorize minority families? How many people have died because of your greed? Blackwood struggled to sit up, his expensive suit rumpled and torn. You don't understand how the world works. Those neighborhoods were dying anyway. We were bringing in investment, creating jobs. You were stealing people's homes and destroying their lives. We were creating value. Do you know what the East Side was like before we started the redevelopment? Crime, drugs, decay. We cleaned it up. By having Martinez and his crew terrorize families until they sold for pennies on the dollar. By providing law enforcement services where they were needed most. Rachel stared at him in disbelief. You actually believe that, don't you? You think you're the hero in this story? I'm a quittist. Sometimes you have to break a few eggs to make an omelet. Those eggs were people's lives. Families with children. Elderly residents who'd lived in their homes for decades, casualties of progress. The casual dismissal of human suffering in Blackwood's voice made Rachel's trigger finger twitch. She'd killed for less in Afghanistan enemy combatants who at least had the excuse of fighting for their beliefs. Blackwood was worse. He was a predator who wrapped his crimes in the flag and called them patriotism. Tell me about Marcus Webb, she said. I don't know any. Rachel pressed the gun harder against his skull. Don't lie to me. Webb was the fake FBI agent you sent to kill me. Where did you find him? Private security firm. They handle sensitive situations, meaning they kill people who threaten your business interests, meaning they protect important investments from outside interference. How many others? How many people has Webb killed for you? Blackwood was sweating now, dark stains spreading across his shirt. I don't keep track of operational details. Give me a number. Maybe 3, 4 at most names. I don't remember. Rachel cocked the pistol. Names. Rodriguez, Maria Rodriguez. She was a city councilwoman in Toledo who was asking too many questions about our development deals there. Rachel's stomach lurched. She remembered reading about Maria Rodriguez's death, a supposed robbery gone wrong outside her office. The police had never found the killer. Who else? A journalist in Akron, David Kim. He was investigating police misconduct. Another random murder that had never been solved. Rachel was starting to understand the true scope of Blackwood's operation. And the fourth, a federal prosecutor. Assistant U.S. Attorney Patricia Wells. She was building a RICO case against some of our business partners. Wells had died in a car accident 6 months ago. Mechanical failure, the investigators had concluded. But now Rachel knew better. They're a serial killer with a law degree, she said. I'm a visionary with the courage to do what's necessary for Ohio's future. The man was genuinely delusional. In his mind, he wasn't a criminal, he was a patriot fighting for economic development. The fact that innocent people died in the process was just the cost of doing business. Rachel's phone buzzed with an emergency alert. FBI SWAT teams mobilizing. 6 months later, Rachel Chen stood in the rebuilt kitchen of her new home on Elm Street, watching the sunrise paint the sky orange and gold. The house was different now, stronger, with reinforced walls and bulletproof windows that the FBI had insisted on installing, but it was still home, still the place where she'd chosen to make her stand. The coffee maker gurgled to life as her phone buzzed. With the morning's first news alert, Blackwood sentencing today, former senator faces life in prison. Rachel smiled and poured herself a cup of coffee. It had been a long 6 months of testimony, trials, and media attention, but today, finally, justice would be served. Her doorbell rang at exactly 7 a.m. Through the reinforced glass, she could see Rodriguez standing on her porch with his camera equipment and his trademark grin. "Morning, Ghost. Ready for the victory." Don't call me that," Rachel said, opening the door. "I'm just Rachel now. Tell that to the 10,000 people who bought Ghost t-shirts after your story went viral." She shook her head but couldn't suppress a smile. The merchandising had been Rodriguez's idea, way to fund legal defense for other families who'd been targeted by corrupt officials across Ohio. So far, they'd raised over $2 million. "You sure you want to be there today?" Rodriguez asked as they walked toward his van. "Blackwood's got nothing left to lose. He might try something stupid, I'm sure. I want to look him in the eye when they read his sentence." The federal courthouse in Columbus was surrounded by media trucks and protesters. Some carried signs supporting Rachel and the families who'd been displaced by Blackwood's schemes. Others demanded justice for the 4 people who'd been murdered. A smaller group held signs calling for police reform and an end to corruption in government. Rachel had become a reluctant symbol of resistance against institutional corruption. Her live-streamed confrontation with Blackwood had been viewed over 50 million times, spawning documentaries, book deals, and a proposed Netflix series that she'd refused to authorize. Inside the courthouse, the gallery was packed. Rachel recognized faces from her neighborhood: Mrs. Patterson, who'd lost her home to a suspicious fire after refusing to sell; Carlos Mendez, whose family had been harassed by Martinez's crew for months; Sarah Winters, the dispatcher who'd risked her career to help expose the conspiracy. In the defendant's chair sat Senator Richard Blackwood, looking nothing like the powerful politician he'd once been. Prison had aged him dramatically. His expensive suits had been replaced by an orange jumpsuit, and his carefully styled hair was now gray and unkempt. Judge Margaret Thornton took the bench at exactly 9 a.m. She was a federal judge with a reputation for tough sentences and zero tolerance for corruption. "The court will come to order. We're here for the sentencing of Richard Allen Blackwood on charges of conspiracy to commit murder, racketeering, civil rights violations, and public corruption." The prosecutor, Assistant U.S. Attorney Michael Truneau, relation to Rachel, despite the shared surname, stood to address the court. "Your Honor, the defendant orchestrated a criminal conspiracy that spanned multiple cities and resulted in the deaths of 4 innocent people. He used his position as a United States Senator to protect a network of corrupt police officers who terrorized minority communities for financial gain." Chen outlined the full scope of Blackwood's crimes: the forced displacement of over 200 families, the theft of millions in property value, and the murders of anyone who threatened to expose the conspiracy. The defendant showed no remorse during his trial. Even now, he maintains that his actions were justified by economic development. This court must send a clear message that public corruption will not be tolerated, regardless of the perpetrator's position or political connections. Blackwood's attorney, an expensive defense lawyer from Washington, D.C., argued for leniency based on his client's age and prior public service, but his heart wasn't in it. The evidence was overwhelming, and public opinion had turned decisively against the former senator when it came time for victim impact statements. Rachel was the first to speak. She walked to the podium and looked directly at Blackwood. For a moment, the courthouse was silent except for the clicking of camera shutters. "Senator Blackwood," she began, her voice steady and clear, "6 months ago, you sent Officer Martinez to destroy my home because I had evidence of your crimes. When that didn't work, you sent a hired killer to murder me in cold blood." Blackwood stared back at her, his face expressionless. "But your biggest mistake wasn't attacking me. Your biggest mistake was believing that you could terrorize an entire community without consequences. You forgot that America was built by people who fought back against tyranny, people who refused to bow down to bullies, no matter how powerful they seemed." Rachel's voice grew stronger as she continued. "You called the families you displaced casualties of progress, but those casualties had names. Maria Rodriguez was a mother of 3 who fought for affordable housing. David Kim was a journalist who believed in the truth. Patricia Wells was a prosecutor who dedicated her life to justice. And there were others, people whose only crime was standing in the way of your greed." The courtroom was absolutely silent now. Even the reporters had stopped typing. "You think you're a victim of circumstance, that you were just playing the game the way everyone else plays it? But that's not true. You chose to become a predator. You chose to use your power to hurt innocent people, and now you get to live with the consequences of those choices." Rachel paused, her eyes never leaving Blackwood's face. "I don't forgive you," I don't feel sorry for you, and I hope you spend every day of the rest of your life remembering the families you destroyed and the lives you ended." She returned to her seat to scattered applause. Other victims followed Mrs. Patterson, whose house had been burned down. Carlos Mendez, whose son had been beaten by Martinez's crew. Family members of the people Blackwood had ordered killed. By the time the victims' statements were finished, even Blackwood's attorney looked defeated. Judge Thornton called for a brief recess before sentencing. Rachel stepped outside for air and found herself surrounded by reporters. "Ms. Chen, how do you feel about the possibility of a life sentence? Ms. Chen, what's next for you after today? Ms. Chen, do you plan to run for political office?" She held up her hands for quiet. "I'm not a politician. I'm just someone who believes that powerful people should be held accountable for their actions. Today, hopefully, that accountability becomes reality." When court resumed, Judge Thornton wasted no time. "Mr. Blackwood, please stand." The former senator rose unsteadily, his hands shaking slightly. "The crimes you committed represent a fundamental betrayal of the public trust. You used your position as a United States Senator not to serve the people of Ohio, but to enrich yourself and your criminal associates. Your actions resulted in the deaths of 4 innocent people and the displacement of hundreds of families." Judge Thornton's voice carried the weight of absolute authority. "The court finds that your crimes were premeditated, extensive, and showed a callous disregard for human life. You have shown no remorse and no acknowledgement of the harm you've caused." She lifted a document from her desk. "Therefore, it is the judgment of this court that you be sentenced to life in federal prison without the possibility of parole on the conspiracy to commit murder charges. Additionally, you will serve consecutive sentences of 20 years each on the racketeering and civil rights violation charges." The gavel came down with finality. Richard Blackwood, former United States Senator, would die in prison. As federal marshals led Blackwood away, he turned to look at Rachel one last time. She met his gaze without flinching, and for a moment she saw something she hadn't expected: fear. Not fear of prison or death, but fear that his legacy would be defined by this moment, that he would be remembered not as a powerful politician, but as a common criminal who'd been brought down by a woman he'd tried to destroy. Outside the courthouse, Rachel found herself at the center of a media storm. Reporters thrust microphones in her face while cameras captured every word. "Ms. Chen, Senator Blackwood, received life in prison. How do you feel? Justice was served today, not just for me, but for every family that was targeted by this conspiracy. But our work isn't finished. There are 17 other people who were part of this network, and they all need to face consequences for their actions." "What about Officer Martinez? His trial starts next month." "Danny Martinez was the face of this conspiracy from my neighborhood. He terrorized families, destroyed property, and tried to cover up his crimes with violence. I hope he gets the maximum sentence." "Ms. Chen, you've become a symbol of resistance against corruption. What's your message to other people who are facing similar situations?" Rachel thought for a moment before answering. "My message is simple. Don't be afraid. Powerful people want you to think they're untouchable, but they're not. If you have evidence of wrongdoing, document it. If you witness corruption, report it. And if the system fails you, fight back. Because sometimes, one person with courage and conviction can expose an entire conspiracy." "Are you planning to run for office?" "No, I'm a warrior, not a politician. But I'll keep fighting corruption wherever I find it." As the press conference ended, Rodriguez pulled Rachel aside. "So what's next, Ghost? I told you not to call me that. Force of habit. But seriously, what are you